Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our band talk, our second episode for this year. Tonight, we have five composers, four right now, but hopefully the fifth is going to join us. And I want to thank our sponsors for this. We have ASBDA, the North Carolina chapter, Tracy Humphreys. We have the National Band Association, the North Carolina chapter, which is Rodney Workman. Our NCBA, North Carolina Bandmasters Association, with Jim Kirkpatrick. And then our North Carolina chapter of WBDI, which is Melanie Watson. And for anybody interested, if you want to check out those organizations, they're in the chat box. And then I want to introduce our composers this evening. And I'm also going to put in the chat box a full version of everybody's bios. So you can check that out as well. So those should both be in there for you. I'll go ahead and start with Christina Huss, and hopefully she'll be joining us at some point. With a career spanning 35 plus years in music education, Christina has taught and conducted bands at both the middle school and high school level, most recently as director of bands at Valdosta Middle School, where she retired in 2016. Throughout her career, Mrs. Huss's bands have performed in multiple venues throughout the southeastern United States and have consistently received superior ratings in various state and regional events. She's a founding co-director and conductor of the Azalea Winds Community Band based in Valdosta, Georgia. Next, we have Valerie Laney-Rowe. She received her Bachelor of Music Education degree from Arkansas Tech University in Russellville. She has taught band in Arkansas for 11 years and has recently accepted a position teaching at Camden Fairview Middle School. That's probably old, right, Valerie?
Yes, this is my 15th year.
Okay.
I know I need to update that.
That's okay.
I actually just accepted a job to work at Magnolia Public Schools starting in the fall.
Yay. Her specialties include teaching woodwinds and auxiliary lines. Professionally, she's a member of the International Clarinet Association, Arkansas Women Band Directors Association, the Arkansas Bandmasters Association, and Phi Beta Mu. Next, we have Dr. Amy Riebs Mills. Bursting with joy, drama, and hope, Amy Riebs Mills' music shines with melodic beauty, rhythmic intensity, and harmonic richness, and has been enthusiastically received around the world. She writes large-scale chamber and solo works which have been performed in foreign capitals, at international festivals, and throughout the USA. A trailblazer as a woman composer and conductor, Mills founded the National Women's Symphony in Washington, D.C., served as the first woman commander-conductor of the United States Air Force Band and Singing Sergeants, and for 14 years was music director of the La Crosse Symphony Orchestra. She has guest conducted orchestras in Russia, Poland, Israel, Brazil, Mexico, and around the world. Here's Christina. David Samuels is next. He's a native of Pensacola, Florida. He received his bachelor's degree in music education at Troy University. After graduation, David continued his education at Troy, where he obtained his master's degree in the science of education. David has composed and arranged music for concert bands, jazz bands, and marching bands around the Southeast, and is a multi-award-winning writer for his music on J.W. Pepper. In addition to his composing and arranging, David enjoys performing live as a jazz pianist. I would love to hear that, David. David is currently the director of bands at Foley High School in Foley, Alabama. And we have Jorge Vargas. And Jorge says that he's also called George, so either is okay. He was born in Mexico, currently resides in Eagle Pass, Texas. His full-time job is a band director at Memorial Junior High, where he teaches beginner band, concert band, and mariachi. His writing career started when he was asked to arrange several mariachi songs for the local high school. After several years of honing his skills as a mariachi composer and arranger, he wrote his first marching band show. After writing for marching band, he took a chance and submitted a string orchestra arrangement of Cielito Lindo to Grand Mason Music. Vargas has released several band works published by Alfred Music, Randall Standridge Music, and Excelsior Music. Several of his band compositions have been added to the editor's choice list, and his band compositions, Red Giant and Luna y Fuego, have been performed at Midwest. So welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here tonight. Christina, your bio was first, so we already got it in. So thank you so much. One of our goals in the North Carolina Bandmasters Association is to increase awareness and discourse on the issues of repertoire's historical contents and to diversify our repertoire. And I was looking at different composers that I have not had as much familiarity with. And I thought for North Carolina band directors, it would be great for them to be exposed to you all as well. And so, this has to deal with learning more about other composers that, sometimes we get stuck in a rut as band directors, and we know who we like and we rely on. And we're just really happy to have you all here with us tonight so we can expose everybody to that. So let's start off with Jorge. When you started composing, did you have a mentor or did you just start on your own with the mariachi?
Well, I just started on my own. When I started teaching, they created this mariachi class, and there wasn't any music to be found. So most people, what they did in South Texas was just write their own arrangements. So I started doing my own, and I started writing for a while. And then that's when I started exploring the other types with the marching band. They soon asked me to write a marching band piece. And then from there, in 2010 is when my first I published piece with Grand Mesa, was published in Cielito Lindo, which was a string orchestra piece. And then from there, it just took off.
It sounds like you're very versatile with what you can, for whatever ensemble you can write for. That's really cool. Valerie, how did you get your start, and did you have a mentor?
I actually started writing because I was teaching 7th grade band. They were second year players. And, we would order books at the very beginning of the year for learning new notes and new rhythms and everything. And it would always take a lot of time to get those in because everybody's ordering at the same time. And so I started out by writing these little chorales, but I would sneak in like hot cross buns. And I would use that to try to get the kids to figure out who's playing the melody. And so I wrote just a small series of chorales to get them to learn how to balance and share the listening space. And that turned into writing a few more things. And I didn't have a composer as a mentor, but I did have a mentor that was at the high school band, David Stewart. And when I really finished my first piece for band, he said, "You really need to turn that into somebody." And I was like, no. And he was like, "Yes, you do." And I trusted him. And so that was kind of how everything kind of got rolling for me.
That's fabulous. It's always good when you have somebody in your corner rooting for you. David, how did you get your start?
There we go. Had a little trouble there, malfunction there. For me, I first started on my own, and then as I kept writing, I would develop more. I would get mentors throughout my college career. But first of all, I started music playing by ear. I would go to church and, pick out these songs and stuff and learn those exactly like the tape was given to me, because we didn't necessarily have the music or anything like that. So I would pick everything by ear, and then I would listen to, different gospel piano players. And then I would combine and make it into my own. And it would just bleed over into music when I started learning theory and all that kind of stuff when I started going to college. So a little bit of mixture of everything from mentors to starting on my own. And here I am today.
That's awesome. I actually went to a choral concert last night, and it was mostly spirituals and gospel, and the pianist was just amazing. And if you have any talent like that, it blows me away. Amy, let's hear how you got yours started.
Well, my story is a little different. I actually spent 30 years conducting first. I had high school band, jazz band, beginners for 2 years. Then I joined the Air Force for 10 years. And then and in the Air Force, I did band mostly, but I did the singing sergeants as well. And then I moved to orchestra. I can never be happy in one place, so I kept moving around in the music world. But towards the last couple of years of when I was an orchestra conductor in La Crosse, Wisconsin, I started feeling like I wanted to move into composition, but I needed to transition. So I thought, well, I know I need to learn finale, and I want to be sure I'm really good at orchestration and that kind of thing. And so I started writing arrangements for our orchestra summer pops concerts. So that's where I thought it was everything a composer has to do except actually compose new music, but it was everything else. And I learned a lot from that. And so that after a couple of years of doing it, I thought, okay, it's time to make a change, and left the podium and started writing full time. And I've been doing that for 14 years. And so now I say to people, I'm not a young composer, but I'm a new composer. And it's been really an amazing, I couldn't believe how different it was being on the composer side. I had commissioned pieces, I'd worked with composers many times, but I really didn't get it until I was doing it myself. And it's been an amazing process.
So quick question, a little off topic. What made you decide to go into the Air Force?
Because it was when was it? 80? A long time ago. And I had the desperate driving need to be a conductor at that time. Most of us now have that need to be a composer, but at the time it was conducting for me. And that was the only full-time professional conducting job outside of the university that I could get. And I had finished my master's degree, but I wasn't ready for university teaching yet. So that was a different direction I could go in as a professional conductor. And it all kind of took off from there.
Oh, that's very cool. And Christina, how'd you get your start? And did you have any mentors to help you along the way?
Well, I actually started teaching back in 1985 or so. And I think I spent 28 years at one school, and it was it fluctuated from a very, very small band to over 100 there toward the end. And when you have a very small band, but you're trying to remain competitive, you do a lot of composing and rearranging and that sort of thing to stay afloat. And I actually never really considered myself a composer, just a lifer, a teacher in the trenches, if you will. And I did have a mentor. There was the gentleman that I worked with, Alan Carter, who is also a composer. And he was like, you really should do something with this music, that you're writing. But it, like Amy, I actually am an older composer, but I'm a new composer, relatively new. I think I've been composing now for about 3 years since COVID. So it's been a lot of fun. I never thought I would at this place in life that I would be opening a new chapter of composer. So it's a blast. It's just been a blast.
And my wife is 53 and she didn't discover she could compose until 45. And so she's entered competitions and she can't do it anymore because she's not emerging, but she's like, I'm not that old as a composer. So I understand that side of it and coming to it later. So Jorge, I know you mentioned your first piece to be published. How did that happen for you? And tell me the name of the piece again.
Okay, so I was just on the internet looking for places to submit music, and it was getting to the point around that time where more and more publishers were accepting submissions through, you can send it through the internet now, you can send it through email. And so I just typed that in. The first thing that came out was Grand Mesa Music. And I had these pieces. I had done it for mariachi. I had 3 of them. And one of them was Celito Lindo. I submitted the 3 pieces and I got a response from them, from Walter Cummings, who was, now he's kind of retired from that, but he just sent me an email. He said, we love the pieces and we want to publish all 3 of them, but I think we're going to do one every year. And so that's how it started. I was Celito Lindo for string orchestra. I had written for violins in the mariachi. They have violins, but I've never written for string orchestra. So I was kind of just, trying to orchestrate it correctly, or the way I knew. And which means I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of, and one thing they mentioned was, it goes, I really like the way you orchestrated the inner voices, or, and I'm like, okay, that's great. So I just kept doing that. So I don't have a lot of string orchestra pieces, but after that, I kind of asked them, can I submit a band piece? And then my first band piece was something called Mystic Chant a while back. And so that's how it came about. Then later on, I contacted Alfred, and so I submitted the piece Red Giant, and from there, that's kind of where, I've been writing for a long time, but from that point, that's kind of where it took off. I was submitting, or I was getting like 1 piece published every other year, something like that, maybe 2. And now it's like 5 or 6, from that point on. So, but so if it's one thing I have to say is, if you keep at it, eventually, once you start honing your skills, I think that's when, good things start coming your way.
That's a really great attitude, and you must be a very patient person, Jorge.
Oh, yes.
Valerie, how about you?
So when my mentor encouraged me to start writing and submitting it, one of my friends that is in composing, Randall Standards, I sent some of it to him, and he helped me a little bit with some of my music, but he also encouraged me to look at the pieces of the composers that I really looked up to, and try to format my scores to look a little bit more like that, and just encouraged me to do that. And even at one point he mentioned to reach out to them. And so I was shaking. I remember I was sitting and shaking at my computer, and I emailed a couple of my pieces to Larry Clark. And I didn't know who he was face to face in person, and he didn't know me. And I was actually really, really shocked that he messaged me back. Like, it was almost like I was just such a fan that I was like in shock, And I think that was before he started his publishing company. And so after he started Excelsior Music, he reached back out to me and asked me if I had any luck getting those published. And I had told him I hadn't done anything with them yet. And so he asked if I would be interested in doing that. And so of course I was like super excited. I was like, yes, yes, right now, let's do this. So that was kind of how all of that fell into place for me.
That's really exciting. The fact that he reached back out to you, just that had to be too cool.
I was shocked. I was so shocked because I figure, that they must be very busy and I'm just one person out of how many, but I've come to know him a little bit more and he's just such a caring, wonderful person. And so I felt like I was very blessed.
Definitely. David, how about you?
My first piece was back in 2010. One of my mentors in college was Mr. Ralph Ford. He was also director of bands at the time, and he's also a composer as well. First of all, he was blown away with the jazz part of me, and then he found out that I started composing music because I had a few friends of mine, because I usually keep to myself and I'm actually really shy. A couple of my friends went and told him that, hey, he actually, not only does he play piano, he actually writes music and stuff. So I went to his office and I showed him everything that I did, and he was impressed. And he had symphony band play quite a few of my pieces. Very thankful for that. And then he started putting me in touch with people. Like I would meet, because I stayed for a graduate assistantship. So I would pick up composers, because we'd have composers in residence for all the high schools honor bands that we hosted at Troy. So he would make sure that I would go pick him up. I would ask them all the questions and stuff. And then sooner or later, he put me in touch with someone with Jalen and Matrix Publishing. So I started writing original marching band music, and then a couple of concert band pieces. So that was back in 2010 when I started, when I was first published.
That's awesome. And I love that your friends did that. Otherwise you wouldn't be here with us tonight.
Yeah.
Amy, what was your first piece and what's your story with it?
My first piece or my first published piece?
Your first published piece.
Actually, let me answer both of those questions.
Okay.
Because again, I kind of tend to do things backwards. When I left the podium and decided I'm going to be a full-time composer, and I started writing, but there was nobody to write for, so I found a contest, and I wrote for the contest because it's nothing like a deadline to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my piece done. It's called Hashemayim, which is Hebrew for the heavens, as in the beginning God created Hashemayim. So it was done based on some photographs of the Hubble Space Telescope. It was for full orchestra. It was to be done with the images over the top of the orchestra. And it was all done, and I sent it in, and of course, nothing, nothing. I didn't really expect anything, but it was fun. I was sitting there, and then like the next summer, that's in the fall, in the summertime, I got a call from my manager saying, we have a conducting gig for you in Aguascalientes, Mexico. They want Schumann third, a Mozart concerto, and something American. I'm like, yeah, I can manage Schumann, Mozart, no problem. Something American. I really thought, wait a minute, I have something American. And so I called a friend and said, when I get home on Tuesday, can you do parts for me by Thursday? Because we have to get him to Mexico Thursday night. And she said, if I don't sleep, yeah, I think I can. So we managed to do that. And so to my shock and amazement, my first big premiere was that, which it was just astonishing. And then I kept going on from there, self-published. And I was working with a lot of professional orchestra people, writing solo concerto things for them. I kept going and going. I also judge with World Strides festivals, and I was speaking with Carl Stroman, who's a very well-known composer, band and jazz, and very, very experienced. And I said, Carl, how do you make a living at this? Because I've got a lot of good music for it, not making a living yet. And he said, oh, you need to write for schools. And I'm like, oh, okay, how do you do that? So he connected me up with Larry Clark, as Valerie mentioned. And so I sent Larry all my great stuff and like no response. And then I looked at his website and it said, most composers send us all their great stuff, but that's not what we want. What we want is submission of a piece a school band could play, and we'll see if we would publish it. I'm like, oh. So then I sat down and started writing for school band. And my first idea was a piece called Click, Click, Click. And it's an arrangement of Up on the Housetop. And they go, da 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 da, and have the kids go, you know, tongue clicks, click,
Yeah.
click, click. So that's how it works. So it's totally a novelty piece and one a cute little Christmas piece. And guess what? They chose it, they published it, and we made J.W. Pepper's, you know, whatever that, you know, editor's choice list.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I have 3 major concertos. And my first published piece is Click, Click, Click. Very humbling, wonderful experience. And I just kind of kept going on from there. So I kind of do both sides of it. Because I love writing for schools. I love students. So I just have really good time doing both.
That's very interesting to hear how you've had to balance both of those. Christina, how about you with your first published piece?
Well, actually, again, another tie to Larry Clark. I'd met him at a local high school here. So he had told me, send me some of your music. So I started out, I don't know where my mind was. I sent him a march and it was terrible. It was just the worst thing you could imagine. And he wrote back. He was really nice about it. In fact, we talk about it every now and then. It's, do you have something else that you would send? And so I sent him a piece called Forevermore. And it's a piece I was very blessed to have published with his Excelsior. It was his new business at the time with Excelsior Music Publishing. I've been real happy with it. So
That's great.
it was just performed at Midwest this past December.
Yay.
O'Fallon Township did a great job, just an amazing group. So
That has to be quite the feeling to hear one of your compositions at Midwest, I'm sure.
oh, absolutely.
You know, we've heard a little bit about some of you, how being a conductor, band director has influenced you as a composer. Do you share with us, Jorge, that what influenced your work as a composer from being a director or a conductor?
Well, I think one of the things is you experiment with your group. So you write something and then you pass it out and then you listen to it or you get feedback from them. And, you know, you talk about, or somebody has mentioned, you know, writing for school, for public schools. That's where it's at right now. I mean, that's what, especially since, you know, we went through a few years with a lot of programs that were shut down due to COVID. And so now they're doing these grade 0.5 pieces, which is,
Yeah.
you know, very, very popular. And so, you know, you experiment with your group and, you know, depending on the reaction, you either say, you know what, this is great, I'm going to submit it, or it's back to the drawing board, you know, and then pass out a second version. And sometimes they go, oh, we like this one better, or no, we like the other one, you know. And so that, as a band director, it's just perfect. You know, it's just perfect there where you to test out new pieces. There's some pieces that you give to the high school a little bit tougher. I teach at a middle school, you know, but you know, that helps a lot because you're I mean, my program is going through what all the programs are going through. You know, you're talking about rebuilding and coming back, getting more numbers little by little. And so you want to adapt the music to what's happening, you know, with schools in general. So that is something, the major influence. I mean, I have influences from other, composers, but right now, the influence is like, how can we make music sound good, but make it to where these students, it's easy for the students to play, but yet they still enjoy it. There's some pieces you can write which easy to play, but not, or it's not very enjoyable, or there's not a challenge, but so that's what I'm trying to do right now. That's what I'm gearing towards. So my music is mainly in the 0.5 to 2.5 range. And I've tried doing some harder or more difficult music, and the publishers, they go, we like this piece, we want you to make it easier, and I think they understand also that there's a big demand for easier music right now. So that's what I'm trying to do.
That's really true. And I'm, as a former middle school band director, I was always searching for those beginning pieces for my bands that you're right. It needs to sound really good, but still be accessible. So I really appreciate your work in that. Valerie, how about you?
So I remember being younger when I first started out in band, and I had a lot of friends in the band, and we would always talk about the music we liked. And I would have a friend that played trumpet and she liked this piece, but I didn't like it. Or a horn player that liked this piece, but I didn't like it, and they didn't like the ones that I did, because it can be really difficult sometimes to make the individual parts interesting. And so as I started to write, one of the things I wanted to do is write things that could engage everybody in the band. So I don't want it to be, I don't know how to, not easy, but I wanted to make it a challenge for everybody, even for the students that typically have maybe just the bass line.
Yeah.
And so I try really hard to write for the younger kids melodies, counter melodies, and just really interesting bass lines and rhythms, just to try to get them used to hearing one another, playing with that good technique, and getting them ready for the pieces that already do that in the high school band, the upper level. And so that's kind of one of the things that I strive for. And I like to try to give the kids something to picture when they're playing it. I think about one of my favorite pieces for middle school band is Train Heading West and Other Outdoor Scenes. And so that was probably like the favorite piece of my younger kids that I always try to do with them. And I try to write kind of like that, where they've got a goal and objective, and they're trying to musically make you and draw in that audience and make them see that picture. So that's one of the things that I try to do for the younger bands, for the younger groups, whenever I write.
Yeah, as a trombone player, I really appreciate that you try to do that for the lower instruments. So thank you. Yeah, and I really think with this generation of students that there's a lot of visual stuff going on, and for them to imagine that, I think is just very important, and it really makes it exciting for them. David, how about you?
For me, so I of course I started writing for college bands first, and then after I graduated college, I became high school band director. You can't write for high school what you write for college. So I learned that the hard way, and there's been a couple of times where I was like, just throw that away, and I'll get you a new copy next week. I got to do some editing. So definitely being a band director has influenced my composition. Sometimes the kids are like, hey, can we get some more challenging parts? hey, why did you write this right here? And I get this one. This is my favorite. You must really don't like us because you write a lot of fast notes and stuff. And I was like, well, you're woodwind. And for me, I also play trumpet. So when I'm struggling and stuff, and having to hit those partials and stuff, and then woodwinds is like, you press it, and I know it's bad of me to say, but you press it and it kind of pops out. So I'm sorry. But yeah, definitely just being a teacher and listening to the everyday preparation, getting ready for tunes and stuff, and how long it takes for students to understand the concept of what you're doing. That's definitely influenced my composition a lot.
I really love how you guys use the feedback from your students, and they're brutally honest about it. Amy, how about your work as a conductor, band director, and how that's influenced you as a composer?
I think I feel like 30 years of intensive score study on all different levels was a really good basis to start, so then when I started writing, if I got stuck, I would just take off my composer hat and put my conductor hat, and I go, oh no, that's not good, So that helped a lot. And also, a really strong basis of music education for myself, where I know how to play everything. I could never get that tuba to play myself, but I know how the fingering are, but to really, really know all the instruments. And David, that was funny. You were talking about the woodwinds and the brass, because I played clarinet. And I remember as a student in high school being so bored with chorales. Oh my gosh, just half notes. I liked all the fast ones, And so I remember how it felt to write. And now, like, my brother-in-law is a professional trumpet player, and he plays long notes all day. I'm like, so it's just a whole different mindset. So understanding, and then going through the years of conducting, understanding personality types for different instruments. Those stereotypes really are pretty true, and I really do incorporate that in my writing. And I also like when I'm writing, like if I'm writing about a grade 3 piece, I can write the first flutes and the first clarinets, faster fingerings, but as clarinets, I know what they are, so I know what's hard and what's easy. Yeah. And then I can write the easier things for the seconds and the thirds who may not be as advanced. And so just really understanding difficulties and also what sounds good on different instruments, what's hard, what's easy on different instruments, you kind of put that all together. And then also, again, at Excelsior Publishing, they have Tyler is a great editor, and so is Larry. So like the first stuff I send, they're going, okay, we can see that you have experience composing, but let us tell you how to write for kids. And they worked with me and a lot and helped me find that. So it all kind of, you take everything that from everywhere you've ever been and throw that into everything you ever write, I think. And then it doesn't matter what level, whether I'm writing my grade 1s or my grade 3s or for my pros, I use it all the time.
It sounds like a giant puzzle, like 5,000 pieces. And Christina, how has being a band director influenced your compositions and your work?
I've been sitting here listening to everybody's stories, and I think after 30 years of band directing, and I was a high school band director for 30 years, then I retired for about a week, and they dug me out of retirement and asked me to go over to a neighboring school and help them build a middle school program. As I got into the middle school literature, I just was like, I think there's a little bit of a void, at least when I was actually looking at pieces, and especially for what I seem to keep having. I'm on my third school now, helping build a middle school program, and it seems to be the same type of thing. I had low brass kids that the high school band directors were clamoring, keep those trombone players. I need baritone players. I need tuba players, hang on to them for me. And then you're looking at some of the younger music, and they like to have this one generic part, for all of those instruments. And then I would have maybe 20, 25 kids that wanted to play percussion. And of course we can't have 20 or 25 percussionists, but you don't want to turn anybody away, especially if they've, tested for it and done a pretty good job. So, and I wanted to back up just a minute and tag into something that Ruth, that you said a while ago about our students and their feedback, how it kind of, really makes an impression on us. That was actually when I sent something to Larry and to Tyler over at Excelsior. I had given out a piece of my friends' music, my mentors' music, and the kids were like, this is really good and all, but when are we going to see your name at the top of one of these?
Oh,
so
wow.
That really shot through the heart, I guess. And so I thought, you know what, that's exactly what I do want to try to address. I do want to send in some music that maybe it's a good piece to work on. And it solves lots of things, like maybe various articulations for 7th grade and 8th grade, or get them up over the break, or whatever it is that we're trying to teach middle schoolers, but we want them to have fun too. And we don't want the low brass and the percussion to kind of, sit in the back and not have an engaging, interesting part and get in trouble and maybe have to go down to the principal's office. We really want to keep them, engaged and busy along with the rest of the kids. So I guess, did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, I love that. David's had a couple friends that have pushed him. You had students who are like, you need to do this. And that it really says a lot about you as educators, and that you're willing to listen to those other people. So I'm glad that you did. One of the things I've learned is Excelsior is putting out great compositions that are quality educational pieces, and it's one of the only publishing sites that I can go to, and I feel like there are new people and it's a diverse group of people. With that being said, I'm guessing some of you have had some obstacles to deal with, maybe with race or gender. Maybe you haven't, but what have your obstacles been? Jorge, have you had anything like that?
To be honest, I don't know. I mean, it could be. I was in a last year, I was talking to somebody from a publishing company, and they were, saying, well, how can we go about to promote you? What can we say about you? And I said, well, I mean, look, I'm Hispanic, born in Mexico. Why don't we start there? And the person said something to the effect of, well, we don't want to highlight that. We want to highlight your compositional skills, which is great. But then I asked her, name me 5 Hispanic, composers in your publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't that something, and I also mentioned something that in Texas, UIL, they compiled the list of the pieces that were played the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the top 10, and I was number 9. My piece, Red Giant, was number 9. And I said, how many other Hispanics were on the list? None. I mean, isn't that something to celebrate with students that are sitting, in the band room that are Hispanic, and they get a piece of music and they go, hey, look, that guy has the same last name as me. And, it kind of, I don't know if it changed that person's mind, but they included a little bit more of the story, so the challenge, you think, are there underrepresented composers? Are they just not getting them, or are there not enough? That is a question. I've always had that question, like, and then there's somebody that puts on Facebook that I follow. He always does the numbers for Midwest, how many composers were played. And I mean, it's like Hispanic composers, like 3%, and so again, is it because they're not getting opportunities, or is it because they're not there? So whenever you see a Hispanic composer or any underrepresented composer, I think it should be celebrated. I think the obstacle here is for publishers. Is like, I think it is a delicate, as we talked for a while, and it is kind of delicate. Like, you don't want to parade people out there and go, oh, look, we have this Hispanic guy here. Hey, check him out. I think they don't want to do that, but I think they need to point out or have some type of spotlight for people that are underrepresented, and it's always just that person, he always puts the numbers, and it's like, okay, you got 85% white, and so many are no longer living, and where's the new composers? Are they being represented? And so like I told that person, I was like, hey, if you name me top 5 composers, the top 5 that come off to your head, one of them's not going to be me, but I think if you believe in somebody's music, and you can highlight some of those things, but not for my sake, or I guess for our sake, but for the students, that can someday, they're looking and go, you know what, if this guy here, made it, if he, and I like to write music, you know what, there's hope for me. And so that's the challenge right there, how to do it without, I guess I can understand it's tricky, but nonetheless, I think the problem is we're just not, there's no spotlight yet for us.
No, and I'm hoping that changes a little bit with what we're doing here tonight, but I agree with you. It's both. I think it's both things. But you're right. What is most important is that the kids sitting in band rooms and orchestra rooms and choral rooms, that they're seeing people that look like them, so that they know they can do the same thing, that it's accessible for them. And I really believe that. In fact, doing honor bands now, I'm taking a picture of the composers for each piece, and then having a QR code for the piece, so they can see, oh my goodness, there's somebody that looks like me who's composed this piece. And it might make a difference to that one kid, and that's what it's about. Valerie, how about you?
So I think that there is a lot of hurdles that we feel that we have to kind of jump over, and those hurdles are different for everybody. One of the things that I can remember when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a band director, but I wasn't sure I could do it. I felt like most of the high school directors I would see were men, not a whole lot of women. And so I kind of had that little doubt in the back of my mind, just, is this something that I really am going to be able to do? And one of my very first honor band settings that I was in, we had a clinician, Prissy Buchanan, and she was tough. I am telling you, she whipped our band into shape. We played so much music and at such a difficulty level, and she had high expectations. And just watching her do that, I realized, like, you know what, I can do that. Look at her do that. I can do that too. And so from then on, my heart was just on fire for it. Like, there was no way I was not going to do this. This is what I was going to do. And so that kind of stuck in my mind, at just remembering as a child how seeing somebody else that was like me, that I could relate to, was doing what I wanted to do. And that built my self-efficacy. And so as now being on the other side of it, I look at the kids that are in my rehearsal hall, and I want to build their self-efficacy by exposing them to all kinds of different music written by all kinds of different composers, because I want them to be able to have a moment like that, where if they're doubting themselves or their abilities, they're able to look and they're able to say, I can do this because someone just like me did it. And so that's one of the things that I would say has been affected me a lot in what I do. And even in my programming, I'm very intentional with it. And I found that my most interesting programs are the ones that I was very intentional about programming with a lot of diversity. And so that's just kind of a little bit about how I feel about that and how it's affected my writing.
Very cool. David.
For me, it's more, I think I'm the obstacle. If Larry and Tyler are watching, they're probably going to agree with all this, because I always get an earful all the time. Sometimes I don't send in as much music as I should be, mainly because, we're in a field where there's a lot of great composers, whether they're dead or alive. And then when I sit there at the computer and I start writing music, and I'm like, and I'm thinking about somebody else's piece, and I'm like, I can't measure up. I don't think this is good. I don't think this is good. And then Tyler will call me and he's like, well, what do you got for me? I was like, it's not that good. I was like, well, send it to me. And so I'll send him half a piece of music, and he's like, dude, you need to write this, because it's definitely, it's playable, it's approachable. Bands will love it. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you just saying that? Because me and Tyler, we went to college together. So I'm like, are you just saying this because we're friends or something? He's like, no, no, you need to write this. So there were several phone calls where it's like, you need to get off your fanny and you need to start writing. And I'm like, okay, I'll do my best. So I get talked to, even to this day, because that's still, I am my worst critic. And every time I try to write something and I submit it, I'm like, well, here you go. Best of luck to you. I'm probably going to get a lot of red back when you send it back to me. And it's actually like a few comments there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I think the biggest obstacle for me is me. So I just got to get out of my own headspace and just keep writing. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
I think that's great for people to know, David, because sometimes we all take turns doing that and can't get out of our own heads. And I love that Tyler stays on you about it, but there's only one David, and we want to hear from you. Amy, how about you?
I can give kind of a historical perspective on this. 1978, I was at a job interview with a good high school in Wisconsin, and I was right at the end of the interview when I knew I almost had the job, and they were fidgeting. And I said, what? Like, just whatever it is, just ask me. And they said, tell us, Amy, why did you choose a man's profession?
Ooh.
And I knew the answer to that was going to make or break me getting the job. And I thought about it, and I said, I never thought about it. And I got the job.
Yay!
Okay, fast forward now to 1990. So now I have 10 years of experience as a conductor. I started an orchestra called the National Women's Symphony. We had both men and women in the orchestra, but we featured the music of women composers. And that's when I started really diving into women composers. Remember, I'm still thinking of myself as a conductor at that time. I had no idea I was going to write. But it was hard to find women composers. And I have to say, it was hard. And I looked for historical women composers and living, breathing. The living, breathing ones were great. But it was really hard to find historical women composers' music that was of high quality. There's some, but I believe the reason there's not a lot is because they didn't have finale or computers playback. Composers need to write, hear, learn, and then write the next thing. Well, if they write, but they never get to hear, they aren't going to learn and grow. So that was the purpose of National Women's Symphony. We did that for a couple of years and sort of sprung upon the world, at least in our area in Washington, D.C., that there really are women who are biologically capable of writing music. It was really a breakthrough concept for a lot of people. But it was very interesting finding how difficult that was for people to accept at that point. And then I myself started writing in like 2010. And but by then there was an interest in women composers. It was acceptable, and people thought it was actually biologically possible that a woman could write notes that were of high quality. And so I was really blessed to be starting at a time that my music would be welcomed because of who I am. And then, but bottom line is, no matter who you are, you've got to write quality music. Yeah. Because nobody wants to hear low quality music. It's about quality music. And if you've got quality music, the cool thing about music is it doesn't matter who you are. You write quality music, people play quality music, they hear it, they love it. So it's kind of the great equalizer, I think.
That's awesome that you have that historical perspective. I know when I started teaching, Anne McGinty was it, and that was for a long time. And so it's really cool that we have all these options now. Christina?
Well, I'm gonna, being last, I really feel like, I'm tagging into pretty much everything everybody has said. But I will say, I think as far as an obstacle for myself, I've got two, and they're going to sound vaguely familiar. The first one is I started in 1985. So there just weren't a lot of women, especially in South Georgia, where I've spent most of my career. They're just, there's a lot of football, a lot of coaching, and then marching bands. And that's really what we had for the longest time. And so it was, as I was starting to go through my career, it was a little hard to, I don't know, to get some of the, like Amy said, some of the jobs that are, the men's jobs. So that I might have put up a few roadblocks for me early on. Now, as a composer, I'm going to tag into a little bit of what David said. I think I am my own biggest obstacle most of the time, and it's for completely opposite reasons from David. I'm just, I'm like squirrel, 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 and I've got all these ideas coming out, and I don't know if it's because I waited to my 60s really to get into composing, but now I'm like, oh, I've got this melody, I gotta get this down, I gotta get, okay, what time is it? 4 o'clock? Okay, let's get up. Okay, I can do this. And so that is probably right now for me is just, and I'm also a new grandmother. So those things take up a lot of time. There's only so many hours between, midnight and 4 a.m. So probably, a little bit of everything. Right now, it's me. I think I'm my biggest obstacle.
Well, I know with grandkids, you get very, very busy and it's hard to say no.
Can you say no?
I don't know. Before I ask the last question, Dee, John, Jennifer, David, do you have any questions you would like to ask?
Can you just send in one piece to ask them if they would be interested in publishing a piece? Does that make sense?
Are you
Yeah,
asking?
I mean, they encourage us to submit, and I only submit one piece at a time. As soon as I get it done, I'll submit, and sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. And they say, hey, we're not going to take it, but you know, they can say go look at another publisher if you want. But like to me, it's like I don't have time to deal with that. If you don't like it, I'll just put it away.
Huh.
I would, and this is where I'm going to go back to what I was just saying, you know, maybe I'm just different from everybody else, or maybe I just need some medication or something, but I'm usually sending in lots of pieces and just hoping, you know, at this point, I think like I've been writing since 2020, 2021. So like my first year I submitted probably 4, and I think I was very grateful to get 3. And you know, each season it's probably 4 or 5 submissions for me, but I'm pretty much sticking in, you know, I've been staying in that middle school, lower level high school realm. So I mean, they're not symphonic overtures or anything, but yeah, it's usually about 4 or 5, I guess, per season for me.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, sorry, I had my camera off because I have my little kids and all that. Some of you know about that. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank all of you because it's so fun discovering all your new work. And just this last concert, I played work by Valerie and got to collaborate with Valerie. Jorge, I played your work also, and Christina. And it was so much fun. And I can't wait to go look up all of you. I'm all about finding new stuff. But what I wanted to know is who enjoys collaborating and meeting and, you know, working with the directors. Are you all into that? I know some of us are more outgoing and more comfortable with that than others. And so I guess who would like to do that kind of thing? Because I would love to do it in the future. Amy, I see you. Okay, I'm going to find you. Christina, yes. Okay.
It looks like yeses from everybody.
Awesome. Yeah, so a few years back, I started just kind of reaching out to composers more. It's been so fun. So if you are down, I'm going to come find you.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
So before I ask the last question, I want to say how thankful I am that you all were willing to do this tonight. And I really appreciate your perspectives and your backgrounds, and knowing that it doesn't mean you have to take the same pathway as someone else. You can get there another way. And it's very fascinating. But the last thing I'd like to end with, and Christina, we'll go in reverse order this time. What is one thing you want directors and or band students to know about you as a composer?
Oh gosh, this would be a good time to be last. I just would like for the band directors to feel, and in it here again, it's going into what we were just talking about, to know that what I'm finding in my last several years of being a composer is that we're very open to ideas. We want to know what the directors want, what they need, what they're looking for, what, you know, and that we would do anything to help them. I mean, it's really about the kiddos, because if there are no band kiddos, there's no need for any of us, really. I mean, and it's about the kids. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, if there's something that I can do, if you're playing one of my pieces, or even not, if you're playing, probably you're not playing one of my pieces, if there's something that I can do, please feel free to let me know, and I'll move heaven and earth for the kids if I can.
Awesome. Amy?
I find in general, my best writing is when I'm writing for somebody rather than just writing for the publisher or just writing because I have an idea or whatever. I love collaboration. When I do my concertos, I do a 1-hour interview with the soloist before I even begin writing, because that's how I can really tailor, but then they become universal. So I really love the interaction with colleagues and other musicians, no matter, even if they're student musicians or pros. I really love the interaction. And I think in characteristically, what I love to do with music is I like to find the struggle, work through the struggle, and find great resolution that either brings hope or victory or whatever it is. But I will always, I try to always leave people feeling better at the end of the piece than before we played it for them, so that we take them through a journey that has a satisfying, feel good. I'm so glad I heard that. It really did me good ending for the musician, for the players as well as the audience.
Excellent. David, how about you?
For me, to the band director, I say, explore anything I write. Everything's not written in stone, because there's interpretations all over the place. And sometimes when composers are playing a piece of my music and they do something different than what I intended, and I'm like, huh, I never thought of it. So I actually get inspiration from when band directors are playing my piece and they're doing what they do best, and interpreting music to their students and making their students successful. To the band student, don't be afraid to show your band director or send to composers or even say, hey, I have this idea. I have 2 students right now that are interested in composition, and it's part of the reason why I don't leave the band room often, because they sit in the office and they'll be like, here, look at this, and this is what I'm working on. So to the students, I say, don't be afraid to show what you've been writing or what you've thought about, or just composing or arranging, because it's all about making music. And when students are starting to show an interest in composition as well, hey, we're just raising up the next generation of composers there. So keep at it.
That's awesome. I love that you're mentoring the next generation. Cool.
Yeah.
Valerie?
Can you ask the question one more time? Because I want to make sure I answer.
What's one thing you want directors and or band students to know about you as a composer?
That's really tough.
It's
That's
okay
a
if you
really
don't
tough
have an answer too.
One of the things that I have found out as I age, I would say, if something is kind of scary, if you're asked to do something and you feel like it's kind of scary, it's like a challenge and you're not sure, like, do it, jump in and do it. Because in all of the instances where I had somebody backing me that helped me, push me to do that, a lot of great things have come just to me personally in doing that. So just try to live fearlessly and live for yourself, and fearlessly, because you can do more than you could ever imagine.
That's awesome advice. Jorge?
Yes, what I'd like for them to know was students and directors is that something about my music is I have some recurring themes, and a lot of the pieces are something that they can. They're very imaginative, so it'll take you on a little journey once you play. I have a recurring theme of space. I love space. I got Red Giant, Blue Comet, Protostar, Hidden Planet, all these things. I love space. And and another recurring theme that has lately I've been doing is a lot of Spanish influence in my writing, and I was very hesitant to do that, just because, oh, look, here's this guy, he's Hispanic, writing Hispanic stuff. But somebody who really encouraged me was Randall Sandridge. He's like, you know what, why don't you write? And he started with, why don't you write this piece? And something that's coming out is why don't you write a Christmas medley, but do it in mariachi style.
Cool.
And I'm like, and so started writing it, and it turned out to be really great. It's going to come out pretty soon. But I just started, I was like, why not? I mean, that's something that I'm very familiar with and I really like. So, that's another theme, a lot of Spanish pasodobles, Spanish marches, and a lot of these rhythms that, may be something different for students, but those are these recurring themes that I have, but I also want them to kind of explore with the students, like, play the piece and tell them to try to imagine it. What's a story? I like to do that too, is, we play a piece and you know what? I want you to write a little story about the piece. It's titled this, and then give me a story, a piece of fiction. And then it makes more sense when they can connect with it, So that's probably what I would tell everybody.
Yeah, I would welcome much more music with mariachi style or a Latin influence into it. We need more of it, Jorge, and I appreciate it. You all are fabulous composers. We have a process in North Carolina for getting pieces on our MPA list, and I've done that with Christina and Valerie, and I'm going to add Jorge, Amy, and David to that, and work on some more additions with Valerie and Christina. So you all are phenomenal composers, but tonight I've really learned you're phenomenal people, and I feel really honored and privileged that you joined us tonight. Tracy is the ASBDA NC chapter president. Tracy, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Thank you all so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and it's always so cool to get to hear composers as people and not just these names of, folks that we think are untouchable or what have you. And this has just been absolutely delightful to get to sit in on this. So thank you so much for taking part and sharing your thoughts and your knowledge and everything with us. Sorry about my cat.
Well, thank you all. This has been wonderful. And I know we went over time a bit, but I felt like we had a great dialogue. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. Thank you, everybody.